We're taking a little stroll down memory lane, or more exact, walking through Duluth at about 1910, 1920 and thereabouts. At least that's what these buildings represent, what Duluth looked like back in those days. These buildings no longer exist, though they do here on Depot Square at the Lake Superior Railroad Museum in downtown Duluth. And this is part 2 of our Depot Square experience. We had part 1 just yesterday, and now we're going to look at the businesses that make up Depot Square, starting right here with the Zelda Theater. There were a lot of what they called smaller theaters in Duluth right after the turn of the century. Everybody wanted to be in the theater business. Vaudeville was booming. It was a great time for traveling shows and minstrels and all sorts of wonderful entertainment. And while there were the big theaters like the Orpheum and so forth and the Lyric, there was also the smaller little theaters like this one, the Zelda Theater in downtown Duluth, built in 1911. While it doesn't look anything like this, the old Zelda Theater still exists in downtown Duluth. It's at 311 West Superior Street. And it was Peterson Anderson Florist, and now it's MPPL Financial, looking nothing like this. There are lots of buildings on Depot Square. There's a freight dock behind me. And speaking of dock, there's a doctor's office. And of course, we have a barber shop as well. In 1870, Camille Poyer came to Duluth. He was a French Canadian and had been a fur trapper and a trader, but he was also a cobbler. And he brought with him some leather and leather making tools and opened a little shoe shop. Well, Camille Poyer in 1882 invented something for his past life, that of being a trapper and explorer. He invented the Duluth pack. In 1882, on December 12th, he patented it, and it became quite popular, selling all over the country. In 1911, he sold his company, C. Poyer and Company, to Duluth Tent and Awning, and they still make the pack today. Of course, Duluth had a haberdasher too, a men's clothing store and hat store, and this is it. In 1870, S. Mortrud and his brother Pete, along with their friend Matt Knesny, came to town and opened S. Mortrud's Clothing. It became M&K later, and by the 1960s, this establishment was the largest men's clothing store anywhere in the region. Of course, it went the way of the leisure suit and the Sansabelt pants. In 1901, University of Minnesota graduated its first class of pharmacists. One of them was Alfred Swedberg, and he came here to Duluth and opened White Swan Drug. It was on the corner of Lake Avenue and Superior Street in downtown Duluth. Inside this mock-up are all sorts of potions and medicines from the turn of the century. All different kinds of miracle cures for just about everything. But you could always count on the old leeches and a little bloodletting to cure most whatever ailed you. Of course, you have to have a depot on Depot Square, and we happen to have 2 of them in our mock-up of what Duluth was like in the early part of the 20th century. This is not the original depot, nor does it look like the original depot that was in Duluth in 1870. That was the Lake Superior Mississippi Railway, and it looked like this. What's interesting is this little depot was built on the exact same spot as the very first depot in downtown Duluth. And this brings us to Branches Hall, probably one of the most important buildings in Duluth. It was built in 1872. 2 things about it stand out. It was 2 stories tall, and it was made completely of brick. In the 1870s and just before, Duluth was kind of a ragtag community of nothing more than shacks and huts and lean-tos and maybe even some tents. But in 1870, they started building this, the first brick building and 2 stories tall. William H. Branch built it. He was an Ohio attorney, came to St. Paul, and then he moved to Duluth because he was a director on the brand new Lake Superior Mississippi Railway, and he built this hall. Here in this picture, you can see it located right across from Elevator A, which was the railroad's terminus. That's pretty much where Fitker's is today. And that building you see going up in front of it, well, under construction was Duluth's very first Portland School. All these have something very important in common. When you think about it, you've got a train station from 1870, you've got Mr. Mortrud coming to town to open his clothing store in 1870. C. Poyer, the cobbler, opens a shoe store, and that's in 1870 as well. And they start building this, Branches Hall, in 1870. And what happened in 1870? Duluth came to life. Up until then, just a scrawny little town on the shore of Lake Superior. But with the coming of the railroad, the Lake Superior and Mississippi, and the investment in it by J. Cook and the House of Cook, Duluth had its first big boom, and all these buildings represented. And once again, If you work it hard enough, it all comes back to the railroad. And it all comes back to you, coming back to us tomorrow for another one of these great little vignettes. We hope you're here, we hope you're safe, and we hope you are taking care of each other.